Amida Butsu. Namanda, 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 Namanda. Shi Shin Please join me in reciting the three treasures. 1. Hard is it to be born into human life. Now we are living it. Difficult is it to hear the teachings of the Blessed One. Now we hear it. If we do not realize the truth in this life, when will it be realized? Let us reverently take refuge in the three treasures of the truth. I take refuge in the Buddha. May we absorb ourselves in the principle of the way to enlightenment and awaken in ourselves the supreme will. I take refuge in the Dharma. May we be submerged in the depths of the doctrine and gain wisdom as deep as the ocean. I take refuge in the Sangha. May we live in harmony in the great assembly as disciples of Buddha and be freed from all hindrances, becoming units of true accord in the life of harmony in a spirit of universal oneness, free from the bondage of selfishness. Even through myriad ages of kalpas, hard is it to hear such an excellent, profound, and wonderful doctrine. Now we're able to hear and receive it. Let us thoroughly understand the true meaning of Tathagata's teaching. Namu Amida Butsu. Namu Amida Butsu. Namu Amida Butsu. Namanda, 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 Namanda. We will now chant the Juseige, which are the 3 sacred vows. We'll now sing the Gatha like blossoms.
Like cherry blossoms are the hearts that tomorrow they think they might, for who can tell? But there may be a tempest in the night. Like cherry blossoms are the hearts that tomorrow they think they might, for who can tell? But there may be a tempest in the night.
Thank you all for coming to this morning's Dharma family service. I'd like to start my Dharma message with Gosandai, and I have a PowerPoint to share. Okay, please join me in Gassho. From these passages, we see the word Namu means to take refuge. In the term to take refuge, or kimyo, ki means to arrive at. Further, it is used in compounds to mean to yield joyfully to, kietsu, and to take shelter in, kisai. Myo means to act, to invite, to command, to teach, path, message, to devise, and to summon. Thus, kimyo is the command of the primal vow, calling to and summoning us. Namu Amida Butsu, Namu Amida Butsu, Namu Amida Butsu, Namandav, 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 Namandav. The message I shared for today's Gosandai is from our founder Shinran Shonin's chapter on practice in his magnum opus, the Kyogyo Shinsho. Here, he's explicating the name of, or the meaning of, Namu Amida Butsu. I'd like to spend some time today talking about what Namu Amida Butsu is from a Jodo Shinshu perspective. And there are a lot of ways of talking about it. I want to focus on Shinran's explication from the Gosandai that I just read with you. But first, I think it would be helpful for us to think a little bit about some background and history of Namu Amida Butsu. Firstly, like a lot of Buddhist texts, concepts, teachings, and ideas, much of these things originated in India, generally speaking. So a lot of Mahayana Buddhist text is written in Sanskrit. In some versions of the earliest Pure Land Sutras in Sanskrit, this was written as Namo Amida Buddhaya. When these texts traveled to China, commentaries were written in Chinese, but a lot of the original Sanskrit was transliterated, which is a process of transferring one word from the alphabet from one language to another, which is, to me, really fascinating. Currently, in our Buddhist temple, we can connect to these ideas because we have the historical and religious context to make the connection between the Sanskrit Namo Amida Buddhaya and Namu Amida Butsu. However, if we took those contexts away, the literal translation of the Sanskrit into English, Hail Buddha of infinite life, put beside a literal translation of the characters of Namu Amida Butsu, the translation would be something like "No South Amida Buddha," because the first two characters are transliterated from Sanskrit to Chinese and then to Japanese pronunciation of the Chinese characters. All this is pretty complicated, but it hints to the complexities of Buddhism's traveling around Asia and now to the United States. I think through all of this transition, Buddhisms have evolved and changed, but the lineage of our ancestral teachers have striven to keep some sort of context from these historical changes. To help this make more sense, I'd like to talk about transliteration in another way that might be a little bit more relatable and fun. We were looking at this important phrase in Pure Land Buddhism, Namu Amida Butsu, but let's look at an example of transliteration with food. I think this example of burgers might be good. So if you go to Japan today and order a hamburger, people might know what you're saying, but if they speak no English at all, they might not. However, if you were to order a hanbaga, then you'd get your point across. This is one example of transliteration. Native Japanese has no natural sounds for our English pronunciation of hamburger. All these syllables sound pretty weird in Japanese. However, I've learned that hamburgers are an important food in Japan, so the word was transliterated to hanbaga. Now, if you tell your Japanese friend that you love hambaga ga suki desu yo, then they might agree with you. Also worthy of note is if you went back 200 years in time to Japan and asked someone for a hambaga, they would probably get confused because it's a new word. Though the word is pronounced correctly in a Japanese way, that transliteration didn't exist 200 years ago. It's a similar story with McDonald's. The new transliterated word for McDonald's is McDonaldo. It's kind of hard to say. It probably doesn't sound English to us if we aren't actually looking for the transliteration, but there it is. Thanks to cultural exchange and migration of ideas, transliteration can help us communicate ideas across lines of language. Like most words in general, but especially in the case of transliterated words, they have very little or no meaning without context, which leads to an important point when we think about Buddhist teachings. This image has a lot of information. But what I mainly want to convey here is that Buddhism travels a lot over the biggest continent in the world of Asia for a whole millennium before it even gets to Japan. This means that a diversity of cultures, other religions, languages, philosophies, kingdoms, governments, and empires influenced how Buddhist teachings were recorded, how they were transmitted, and how they were understood. Frankly, right now, we're not in some special unprecedented era of Buddhism where drastic changes are suddenly happening, because Buddhism has evolved throughout all these times. And it's important for us to remember that, and to always honor the lineage of growth and development by looking back at how Buddhism has evolved throughout the millennia. Now that we've laid a bit of an eclectic foundation, I want to get back to Namu Amida Butsu. We looked at a bit at the term's history with Namu Amida Buddhaya as a possible Sanskrit origin. There's a lot of details in there that I'm leaving out for the sake of context in this talk. And we've looked at the idea behind transliteration and how important it becomes in Buddhism. And this is exactly what happens with Namu Amida Butsu. It's transliterated from Sanskrit into Chinese as Namu Amitofo, and then into Japanese as Namu Amida Butsu. There's even slight variations in writing Namu Amida Butsu because both in Chinese and Japanese, these languages went through various stages of simplifying the Chinese characters throughout time. In spite of all this variation, these different pronunciations, there's a meaning, a feeling, a concept behind Namu Amida Butsu, which is grounded in the Sanskrit translation of "I pay homage to the Enlightened One, in the Enlightened One immeasurable." Oftentimes these days, we say Namu Amida Butsu means I take refuge in Amida Buddha. And that's what Shinran was getting at the Gosandai we all read together at the beginning of the talk. Amida Buddha, or Amida Butsu, is the Buddha of immeasurable or unfathomable light and life. And our religion is founded on Amida's primal vow, which promises to liberate us from suffering and the cycle of birth and death. In my own rendition of the primal vow, it states that if anyone, regardless of ability, race, gender, social status, intelligence, wealth, anyone, relies on me and awakens to a heart of faith in my compassionate activity, then they're assured of liberation and Buddhahood in my land of bliss. If this promise is not fulfilled, then may I not become Buddha. This brings us back to Shinran's explication of the first two characters in Namu Amida Butsu, or this concept of taking refuge. The literal translation of Namu is no south, but that's not what it means in Pure Land Buddhism. Shinran states that the obvious meaning is of taking refuge. But then he goes on to further navigate the implications of the verb or action of taking refuge in the Japanese language, which is kimyo. The first character, ki, has several pronunciations and meaningful implications. Shinran says that it means to arrive at. It also is used in compounds, meaning to yield joyfully and to take shelter in. In a sense, this is us as human beings, what we do when we say Namu Amida Butsu. Sometimes we're overwhelmed with harmful emotions or faced with a world full of hate. So we must take shelter in Buddha, Dharma, our teachings, and Sangha, or our community. At other times, we experience ease and happiness. When we can yield joyfully to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, those are the actions that we take. And part of our practice is relying upon Buddha and when we do those things. Shinran continues to explain the second character of kimyo, myo, as the activity of Buddha, urging us to awaken. He says that myo means to act, to invite, to command, to teach. It's path, message. It's to divide or to devise, to summon. Buddha is performing all of these actions on our behalf in order to liberate us from our suffering. When we say Namu Amida Butsu, it means many things. We're calling out to Buddha for help, thanking Buddha for help. And at the same time, I wonder, are we actually saying Namu Amida Butsu? Or is the voice coming out of our mouth actually the voice of Buddha, trying to teach us, inviting us to the safety of Buddha, to the refuge of Sangha, and to the guidance of the teachings or the Dharma? For me, I think that, and I think for Shinran too, all of these things are happening at the same time. So let's all continue saying Namu Amida Butsu together, today and every day. If you'll please join me in Gassho, I'll close the Dharma message by sharing the Gosandai from Shinran's chapter on practice once more. From these passages, we see the word Namu means to take refuge. In the term to take refuge, or kimyo, ki means to arrive at. Further, it is used in compounds to mean to yield joyfully to, kietsu, and to take shelter in, kisai. Myo means to act, to invite, to command, to teach, a path, a message, to devise and to summon. Thus, kimyo is the command of the primal vow, calling to and summoning us. Namu Amida Butsu, Namu Amida Butsu, Namu Amida Butsu, Namanda, 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 Namanda. Thank you for joining us for this morning's Dharma family service. I'm going to end the recording and then we can all hang out for a little while and chat and catch up.